reading sounds like it could be out of today's news,
Oh, I know. Yeah.
except it's changed from the African American to the transgender and gay.
Right. Yeah. And immigrants.
And just because we don't hear about it, it doesn't mean that African Americans are not being
True.
disenfranchised. As we
Right.
speak.
Yeah.
That's what Alex just said.
Mhm.
But it just seems they are pushing the hatred and bigotry.
Yeah.
One of the
more
things
so.
that's nice about Unity Fellowship is the
Because
fact
they're
that
trying
no
to
matter
make
whether
people
you're white,
afraid
black, brown, purple, green,
of what
gay,
they don't
straight, bi,
Exactly.
trans, you're welcome here.
It's all fear box.
You know,
Fear
and
mongering.
it's
Exactly.
just the mindset of everybody here, Pastor Bob all the way down. You know, everybody here. It's home, and you feel like you're going home. You feel like you're in a big accepting family when you're here.
So what makes Unity Fellowship different from other churches in Owensboro is their focus on
Bob, is Lexi's
making
name
sure that
changed now?
everyone feels welcomed
No,
and
she had her name
accepted with
changed a
no
couple of years
conditions.
ago.
They're accepting of the
congratulations.
LGBTQ plus
Thank you.
community, of different people from different backgrounds and cultures.
Was
And this
Lexi
is
born
what
here
really
or somewhere else?
led me to
Kentucky.
joining Unity Fellowship.
And she came
And I
out with a
also
birth
feel
certificate
like
with her
many churches
gender.
focus on the individual,
from Kentucky anyway.
but we are actually meant to be in relationship with others. The concept of Ubuntu, that if one person is oppressed, that all people are oppressed. And I feel like Pastor Bob, in his sermons, he really focuses on systemic injustices
current
and
administration, or
oppression,
because
and that
she's
God
underage?
is on the side of the oppressed.
After many years of being
it's not
out of
the
the
Kentucky
church, we came to the point where we were ready
administration
to find a
was
church, but
don't think they'd have a
I in
problem with,
particular knew that I no longer
or
wanted
at
a
least
part
from
of
Andy's
what
point
I
of
had
view.
experienced
But the
as a younger
legislature
person. My soul and
Kentucky.
spirit had just
Okay, 'cause Chrissy got
no
hers.
longer
That's what
aligned
it
with
says.
what I was being taught about myself. So I left the church for many years, and then as a couple years later,
we
we
probably need to
decided
talk,
we wanted to
Chrissy.
return to a church. So I knew part of that had to be a church
Either
that
way,
would
Bob.
accept
I don't
me,
know whether you're any good right now.
not just welcome to come to the door, but could fully participate in all regard, should we desire. And so we began to visit churches, and we visited Unity Fellowship a while back, and felt like we had made a discovery in a church home.
And we also like this church because it's a teaching church.
Yeah,
Whether
Kentucky
every
just-
Sunday we have
the-
the opportunity
I think the
after
Senate just
service, or even sometimes
passed
during
that,
it, if we have questions,
conversion
and we're not
therapy
sure
bill.
of what he's talking about, or
Again.
if we have
Yeah.
questions as to
I don't
that
think
is preaching,
people
we're allowed
realize
to do
how
that.
destructive
And,
that is.
Oh,
it's something
it's
that
horrible. It
I've
is.
never had in a
Yes.
church, and
There has been a lot of
it's been very
suicides.
enlightening, and
Oh,
I've learned a
absolutely.
lot about
As a
myself,
result of that.
and I've learned about
Yeah.
a lot of things actually, and I, above and beyond anything else, I know that I'm loved, I know that Scott's loved, and I know that we're loved together.
I don't know if
So
they have
it's
the
not
votes to
just
override
like
another
going to
veto or
mass
not,
and
but
big
don't
church.
either.
You just go in, hear the thing, get
I
out.
worry what's
Here,
going to happen when Andy's
actually
term
are
is up.
yeah, I know.
Charged
I
with
know.
asking yourself, what does it mean? And the
Bob, did you hear that
membership is
Bevan's
small
adopted
enough
son
we
had to
can
get
all
a restraining
interact
order
during the sermon
against him?
as well as after the sermon.
No.
So we
Yeah.
can ask each other
So
questions.
he's
you know,
doing court
other
here
people
Thursday,
with their
the
comments
Matt Bevan.
or their questions about whatever we're discussing that week.
All his
what was
guns were
discussed the week
confiscated.
before,
All
whatever.
that. Yeah.
And unlike a
Yeah,
large
he's
church where you
abused
just know the
neglect
people from
and
sight,
abandoned.
you actually
Yeah.
know the
Wow.
people here. Whether they are active in doing something or they're just here every week and they participate in
Chrissy?
on top of
how are
the
you
fact that me
doing?
and his wife are
And stuff
getting a
like that.
divorce.
Or they tell you how somebody
Yeah.
else that they've talked to that you haven't seen is
Did
doing.
someone say my name?
So it's like a very large.
Yes,
it's not just
Chrissy,
a
I
church
wanted to
family, it's a
know,
large
how does your schedule
Just
look?
because
Could
you
you
came
run
from
for
a
Mitch McConnell's
Baptist
open
background
seat
or a
in a year or
Pentecostal
so?
background or a Catholic background doesn't mean you're not welcome. Unity will surprises a lot of
Definitely.
people
Huh? All
because
right, I'm gonna put all my money in
everyone
your
is
campaign.
accepted.
I
Thank you for your
think that's
confidence.
Andy's
You
plan.
won't feel out of place.
Thank you for your
won't
confidence,
right.
and I'll do my best.
feel judged.
Oh, I know you would.
You'll feel like
Absolutely, absolutely. Anyway, I think that's Andy's plan, and I think he's got a real good chance.
I do too. But he'd make a great president.
Yeah, he would.
Yes, you
You
would.
think so? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hey folks, this is Pastor Bob coming to you from Unity Fellowship. You may be really sick of church. You may have given
Daniel.
up on church a long time ago, and maybe you're not even looking for a place. But I want to invite you to a faith community where you'll be safe, where you can be accepted for who you are. Always, for whoever you are right now on your faith journey. Check us out on Facebook Live. Check us out on Zoom.
Is
I think
Daniel
you'll
in
find a
there,
place
Chrissy?
that you're safe, a place that you'll be accepted, a place that you'll feel comfortable.
Pardon me?
Is Daniel in there?
Yeah, he's up there. He's asking for you.
What makes Unity Fellowship different from other churches in Owensboro is their focus on making sure that everyone feels welcomed and accepted with no conditions. They're accepting of the LGBTQ plus community, of different people from different backgrounds and cultures, and this is what really led me to joining Unity Fellowship. This community, at its heart, is open to everyone, and even if you are on the fence and you might disagree, we are still open to having that dialogue and that discussion that fosters growth and understanding. So I feel like the people who come to Unity Fellowship are so open and loving that even if you didn't agree with something that the church promotes, that you're still able to express that and not be judged.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Unity Fellowship. I'm Chrissy Berry Cotton, and I'm going to be your service director today. We want to remind you that Unity is a safe place. You are welcomed and affirmed here in God's love. Now I'd like to introduce our associate pastor, Gator Lundwall.
Good morning and welcome, whatever platform you're joining from or even in person. We are glad you're with us today. That echoes Chrissy's statements that you're welcome, you're safe, you are affirmed. And now let me turn it over to our senior pastor, Bob Coons.
Pastor G, thank you for that. And everyone, we are so glad that you have joined us wherever in the world you may be joining us from. Those of you who are gathered in person on site, as well as those who are gathering with us virtually. We are so glad to have you. I don't know who needs to hear this out there today, but you are beautifully and wonderfully made, a beloved child of God. Every molecule of your being is welcomed and affirmed here at Unity Fellowship. Back to you, Chrissy.
Okay, I'm here. I'm sorry about that. I think there may have been a little technical difficulty. Now I'd like to introduce the first video of the day, Sandy Patty, Via Dolorosa.
Down the Via Dolorosa in Jerusalem that day, the soldiers tried to clear the narrow street, but the crowd pressed in to see the man condemned to die on Calvary. He was bleeding from a beating, there were stripes upon his back, and he wore a crown of thorns upon his head, and he bore with every step the scorn of those who cried out for his death. Down the Via Dolorosa, all the way of suffering, like a lamb came the Messiah, Christ the King. But he chose to walk that road out of his love for you and me. Down the Via Dolorosa, all the way to Calvary. Por la Via Dolorosa, triste día en Jerusalén, los soldados le abrían paso a Jesús, mas la gente se acercaba para ver al que llevaba aquella cruz. Por la Via Dolorosa, es la vía del dolor, como oveja vino Cristo, Rey y Señor, y fue Él quien quiso ir por su amor por ti.
Okay, now it's time for news, joys, and concerns. If you're on Zoom, you can unmute. You can type in the chat, or if you're here in person, you can wave at us, and Darian will bring you a microphone. News, joys, and concerns. Well, I'd like to start with the prayer for all my trans brothers and sisters in Texas. I know they're having a lot of issues there right now, so if we can all think of them in our prayers, I would appreciate it.
And not just in Texas.
Mhm.
Oh no, absolutely not. Everywhere, but Texas is being hit really
I know.
hard right now.
Offer a prayer concern for any and all who are experiencing fear, anxiety, isolation, uncertainty right now, for whatever reason, that God be with them and comfort them through this piece of the journey.
Mhm.
Definitely. Thank you, Gator. Anyone else, news, joys, and concerns?
Well, I just wanted to give an update on my little great granddaughter, Hayden. She is attending meetings for a 12 step, I suppose, and Landon also. So they seem to be doing pretty good, really.
Thank you
Good.
for the update, Becky.
Yeah, glad to hear that.
That is
Yes.
And you know I'll be here for either one of them if they ever need me for anything, Becky.
Thank you, Chrissy. Thanks.
Well, I guess
Now, I'll give a praise report as well. Debbie's having some pretty good days lately.
Good.
So we're enjoying this time where she's not having to do any chemotherapy and recovering from the stroke ever so slowly, but still recovering.
Great news.
Well, I guess I want to share. It would be a joy. I got the privilege of meeting Becky's grandson, Landon, and he was reconnected with two members from Zion, you know, Carol and another friend who he remembered, and they were all excited to see each other again. And that was such a privilege to be part of that and to meet a wonderful young man that has hit a hiccup in his life and is getting it worked out.
Good.
That's a great update.
It was wonderful meeting him.
Oh,
Great.
Hannah has something to say. Did you see it?
Praying that God would open a door, a new door in her life.
Mhm.
Thank you, Becky, for calling attention to it.
Anyone else? Pastor G, would you like to lead us in prayer this morning?
Certainly. If you pray with me. Oh, Creator God, thank you for another Sunday to gather together with friends and family. We ask that you hear the prayer concerns raised this morning. Be with those individuals in ways we will never understand, and guide and lead them and sustain them through the storm. We give you thanks for all the wonderful things that are happening. People coming out of addiction, rising past their struggles, and we give thanks to you this morning for all that. In addition, for all those prayer concerns that weren't spoken this morning. You know the hearts and the minds of those individuals. Comfort them again, Lord. Open our hearts and minds to the message this morning and fully remind us we are loved no matter what. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Now, if you'll join me for our affirmation of togetherness. We gather in oneness together. We praise and worship God together. We proclaim God together. We welcome and affirm all persons in God's love together. We seek to live for God in every breath and heartbeat together. You can join our contact list by texting ADD to 270-201-5022. It'll send a form back to you if you'll just, at least, you don't have to fill out the whole thing, but if you'll at least give us your name, that way we know who we're texting. They'll only hit you up every Sunday, and like I think yesterday we got a special text to remind us of the time change, so they won't burn you up or anything. Also, if you'd like to support this ministry, you can do so one of several ways. You can use our new app. You can click the donate button on our Facebook page, or you can go old school and mail it to P.O. Box 1401, Owensboro, Kentucky 42302. Also, if you're here in person, we have collection plates at each door to the sanctuary. Unity does a whole lot with very little money, so we appreciate anything you can give, but there's never any pressure on you here. You can also get our new app by searching for Unity Fellowship-Owensboro on Google Play Store or the App Store and looking for our logo. And it's really cool because I like how it'll send me like their little reminder every Sunday morning that service is beginning. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'd like to remind you, now I'd like to introduce our second video, Andrew Peterson, Be Kind to Yourself.
You got all that emotion that's heaving like an ocean, and you're drowning in a deep, dark well. I can hear it in your voice that if you only had a choice, you would rather be anyone else. I love you just the way that you are. I love the way you made your precious heart. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. I know it's hard to hear it when that anger in your spirit is pointed like an arrow at your chest. When the voices in your mind are anything but kind, and you can't believe your Father knows best. I love you just the way that you are. I love the way He's shaping your heart. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Well, how does it end when the war that you're in is just you against you against you? Gotta learn to love, learn to love, learn to love your enemies too. You can't expect to be perfect, it's a fight you gotta forfeit. You belong to me, whatever you do. So lay down your weapon, darling, take a deep breath and believe that I love you. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Gotta learn to love, learn to love, learn to love your enemies. Gotta learn to love, learn to love, learn to love your enemies too.
So I want to begin with our breakout question this morning. When have you had to collaborate with people who are very different from yourself? Perhaps someone with whom you strongly disagree or even dislike in order to accomplish a greater good? Collaborating with people different from yourself. When has that happened, and what was the outcome? How did it go? Again, if you are in the sanctuary, if you'll wave a hand, someone will get a microphone to you. If you're on Zoom, you can unmute. If you're on the app, you can put something in the chat. Let us hear from you.
My name's Tim. I used to think that every time I collaborated with somebody, they were very different from me, but I've come to realize the more that I work with other people, the more alike I am with everybody that I've worked with. So
Yeah. And sometimes just being with someone who we might think is different, we find out we've got more in common than we do out of the ordinary, out of the common.
You know, I've always felt like everybody was different than me, honestly. So it's felt like that's just the story of my life. But I did want to comment that since I have been collaborating more with people out in the public, I feel like it's encouraged growth in myself.
Good point, Chrissy.
I think my most profound instance of that is at work. We have employees all around the globe that we'll talk to during the week, and it's just amazing how very, very different our cultures are, our ways of understanding. But then, to Tim's point, there's a common thread of humanity that you will discover in everyone you meet.
Mm-hmm.
I was also going to say at work, fortunately, now I'm retired, but I worked for over 20 years in elementary school where I was an instructional assistant, and so I had to work with teachers and kids from all different families and ways of understanding. And some of the teachers I worked with were very different from me, but you focus on something that you have in common, and we all have something in common. And so you find that thing, and that's what you focus on instead of your differences.
Right, right. Was it hard? Did anybody find it challenging, difficult?
It was very difficult, especially when they assume that you feel the same as they do about something. And so then you have to decide, how am I going to respond? Just ignore that? Or should I put in my 2 cents or be nice about it?
Right.
Bob, it's been tough for me, not just simply a difference of opinion, but if the other individual's opinion is hurting people.
Right.
That's tough because I just can't go along with that. And I won't let them assume I agree. Let's just put it that way.
Sure, sure.
That's been the biggest, hardest thing, the political stuff today, trying to not say anything to hurt anybody. They don't understand people that are on the other side, and you just cause more problems. So this has been very difficult.
Mhm.
Yeah. The political environment right now is very divisive.
Hmm.
So how did you get past the differences in order to accomplish whatever you needed to accomplish, the greater good?
You just don't argue. You see the common things that you have and
Seeking
watch.
out common
Yeah,
ground. Yep.
yes.
I know for me, when I'm working with other people, anytime I'm passionate about something, so whatever thoughts I might have are also charged with emotion. And as soon as I act on that, I usually act out in a bad way. So I just got to pause and step back from it for a minute
Mm,
before I make any moves when working with other people. It's
yeah.
what's best for me.
Sometimes disconnecting from that emotion that drives us.
Hmm.
I always try to kill everybody with kindness.
There you go. And keeping focused on the goal that you're trying to accomplish.
Exactly.
Sometimes just refocusing on that.
I think it's good to remind ourselves success is not getting everyone to agree with us
Yeah,
on every
exactly.
single thing. Yet we can disagree and still work together toward this common goal. I think some people, though, they think to get to that goal, everybody's got to agree with what I think, and that just brings everything to a halt.
Absolutely. We don't have to agree on everything. Tracy writes that her first semester of college, her roommate was from Kenya. Um, that was different. And she was difficult to get along with in addition. So um, thank you for sharing that, Tracy. We've all faced those times.
I've done a
So we're
lot of going.
beginning our Lenten series. Um, As Jesus walked through the regions of Judea, Samaria, and Galilee, he encountered a wide variety of people with different needs, hopes, desires, and perspectives. And so for Lent, we're looking at just a few of those. We're walking with Jesus for our Lenten journey. And today's journey takes us to the region of Galilee, where we meet a Roman official who is seeking healing from Jesus for his son who is dying. Our scripture is from John, the chapter 4, and Pastor G has our reading this morning.
When the 2 days were over, he went from that place to Galilee, where Jesus himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in the prophet's own country. When he came to Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him, since they had all, since they had seen all he'd done in Jerusalem at the festival, because they were also at the festival. Then he came again to Cana in Galilee, where he had changed the water into wine. Now there was a royal official whose son lay ill in Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went and begged him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Then Jesus said to him, "Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe." The official said to him, "Sir, come down before my boy dies." Jesus said to him, "Go, your son lives." The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and started on his way. As he was going down, his servants met him and told him that his child was alive. So he asked them the hour when he began to recover. And they said to him, Yesterday at 1 in the afternoon, the fever left him. And the father realized that this was the hour when Jesus had said to him, "Your son lives." So he himself believed, along with his whole household. Now, this was the second sign that Jesus did after coming from Judea to Galilee.
Thank you. The season of Lent is often a time for prayer and fasting and sacrifice, a time for reflecting on the life and ministry of Jesus, and a time for aligning ourselves with his purposes. Many people choose to give up something for those 6 weeks of Lent as a way of focusing their spiritual attention. Several years ago, probably 10 or 12 years ago, when our granddaughter was probably at about second grade, maybe third grade, she and her parents were discussing Lent and what they were going to do to focus their spiritual attention. And I think her parents were giving up caffeine for Lent or maybe desserts or something like that. And they asked her what she was going to do. And she was having a real difficult time with one particular fellow student in her classroom. And so her response was, okay, I'm going to get along with Joey for Lent. I think I can do that. And she left the room, and after a few moments, she came back in. She said, wait, how long is Lent? Sometimes we can make a sacrifice for a short period of time, but when it's getting along with somebody else, it makes us pause and think about, how long is this now? Anyway, Jesus has just left his hometown, where he got less than an enthusiastic response. In fact, they wanted to hurl him off the cliff because he dared to suggest that God just might actually love all people and not just the Jews. Unlike his hometown folks, the scripture tells us that the Galileans welcomed him. He was received warmly there. And there was a royal official whose son lay ill in Capernaum, gravely ill, according to this, on the brink of death. And he comes to Jesus begging for healing for his son. Now, before I go much further, let me note that both Matthew and Luke record a very similar story. Similar, but not identical, which is often the case in biblical stories, that different authors, especially in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, tell the story with a little different slant, a little different details sometimes. Now, all three of these stories take place in Capernaum. All three of them involve some kind of official, person of power. And all three, the sick person is actively dying. But there are some notable differences as well. The official's identity. He's identified in John as royal official, in Matthew and Luke as a centurion. The dying person in John's version is the official's son, but in Luke's version, the person on death's door is a servant, not a son. And the interaction. In John's gospel, the official comes directly to Jesus and talks directly to Jesus and begging Jesus on behalf of his son. In Luke's gospel, it is all the interaction that takes place through emissaries. He sends people to talk to Jesus on his behalf and on the slave's behalf. But in spite of these differences, most scholars consider these three stories, whether Matthew, Luke, or John, to be the same story. So I want to kind of blend the details of the story together in order to glean the full meaning of this encounter. All three of the stories involve a complete outsider coming to Jesus. And the story takes place on the heels of Jesus' rejection at his hometown. Jesus' ministry is expanding beyond the bounds of Judea, beyond God's chosen people. Jesus' ministry seems to be suggesting that God is bigger than they might think, that God's love is more inclusive than they might think, and that God just might love their enemies, and that other people's faith is just as valid as their own. So in this, I'm going to use Luke's version and call the official the centurion. I think that's perhaps the more obvious outsider role. So in Luke's version, the centurion's compassion stands out. There is great compassion on behalf of others. First, he has compassion for his slave. Now, we would expect him to have compassion for a son, but in Luke's version, it's a slave. It is a servant. For your son, you're willing to do whatever is necessary to get healing for his kid. But this was a lowly slave. To many would only be considered a possession, a piece of personal property, and not worthy of that kind of compassion. But this centurion shows great compassion for the slave and enlists others to advocate with him on behalf of the servant. Second, he has a reputation of compassion for others. In contrast with those whose concerns are only for themselves and people like themselves, the nationalists, the Israel First crowd, this centurion has compassion for everyone. Now, Roman centurions weren't exactly known for their love for the Jews. But Luke says that this centurion loved the nation. And he's not talking about the nation of Rome, he's talking about the nation of Israel. And get this, in Luke's version, it says that he helped build their synagogue. So here is this complete outsider, a centurion who has power over these people, could very easily look down upon these people, and he has used his own abilities to help them build their synagogue. Now, he wasn't a Jew. He didn't believe in their way of worship, and yet he helped build a synagogue for them. So he has a reputation for compassion for others. He also has a reputation for humility, and we see his humility come through in several ways as well. He is a person of power, but he does not exalt himself above others. He, in the story, can obviously work with people who are very different, people who disagree with him, people who worship differently, who think differently, who dress differently, who eat differently. All of these differences did not seem to make any difference to him. He didn't look down upon them. He held himself on the same level with them, even though he was a person of power, even though he had the authority to stand above them all. He did not exalt himself above others. And when he sends the Jewish elders to talk to Jesus, they declare to Jesus that he is worthy of Jesus' attention. But he sends another crowd later and says, Lord, do not trouble yourself. I know they've come and they've asked you to come on behalf of my servant, but don't trouble yourself. I'm not worthy for you to come under my house, under my roof. And that's why I didn't presume to come to you. I sent others. But Jesus accompanies the emissaries who come to Jesus, and he was already on his way to the centurion's home. Then we see him as a person of faith. When he says, I didn't come to you personally, I sent the Jewish elders to come to you. Don't trouble yourself, but just speak the word, and my servant will be healed. He had the faith that Jesus didn't even have to come and touch and show up at his home, that Jesus could just speak the word. He was used to being able to speak and people would respond. He would tell people to go this way or that way or to do this or that. And so he believed that Jesus had that same kind of authority and the power to heal. And so he said, just speak the word, God, Jesus, and my servant will be healed. When Jesus heard this, this comment that just speak the word and my servant will be healed, Jesus was amazed at him. And then Jesus turns to the crowd that were following him and said, I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith. Here is this complete outsider showing complete faith in Jesus. And Jesus calls attention to it. Jesus notices the faith of this outsider and wants people to notice the kind of faith that he has. I don't know about you, but I have met lots of people like that. People who are outside the confines of the church. People who have perhaps not been in church their whole lives. People who are disenchanted with church. People who've given up on church. People who want nothing to do with church. And yet they are people of tremendous character and tremendous faith. Just like this centurion. People who are gracious and kind and humble and have compassion for others. This story is a reminder that the church belongs to God and that God does not belong to the church. I think sometimes we fail to see how much God is working outside of the confines of the church, outside of the boundaries that we might erect. But God doesn't work inside of the boundaries that we put up sometimes. So here is this centurion, Roman, very different from the Jews in Judea. And yet he collaborates with them in many, many ways. We've already noticed that he has helped them to build their temple. And so he's looking for collaborators who would help him seek healing for his slave, for his servant. So he asked the Jewish elders for help. first. He sends them to ask Jesus for healing on his behalf and on his servant's behalf. He gets to thinking about it, and while Jesus is already on his way, he sends a group of friends, a second group. So he's able to collaborate and pull other people and to enlist other people to help, such as his reputation in town. So he sends a second group of friends, it says, who go to Jesus and give the word that, Lord, you don't have to trouble yourself. Just say the word. I'm not worthy for you to come to my house. Just say the word, and the servant will be healed. He pulls together all these unlikely collaborators in order to seek the healing for his servant. It reminds me of a few years ago reading the book Team of Rivals that tells the story of Abraham Lincoln. After Lincoln was elected president, he strategically filled his cabinet with the very men who had opposed him for the nomination, people who were his political rivals. And he intentionally chose people from every political party. He encouraged their disagreement. He encouraged their collaboration. He wanted to hear what other people thought. Very unlike those who would surround themselves with only people who totally agree with everything. Our current administration does not want anybody who disagrees with anything. He only wants yes men who will carry out his demands. This is the exact opposite. This centurion and Lincoln were willing to hear from others and work with others for the greater good. He understood the power of togetherness. He understood that we are stronger together than we are divided, that we are more robust when there's more than one point of view, that we are healthier when we make room for each other. So that the need of this slave galvanized an entire community, people very different from each other, to work on the behalf of the healing for this servant. It is our diversity that is the strength of the church. It is our inclusiveness that is the strength of the church. One of my favorite ways of referring to this church is to call it a community of faith. We are a community. We come together. We work together. We're not divided. We are intentionally very different people seeking a common ground with each other. Let us celebrate our diversity rather than letting that hinder us in any way. So, come to the close of the comments I wanted to call attention to this morning from this beautiful story of collaboration, a beautiful story of working together with people across the aisles, people who are different, and working together for healing, for the greater good, for something that makes a difference in another's life. I invite your comments, your observations. Perhaps you saw something in the story that I missed. Perhaps you've got a question. This is the time for your feedback and your participation in our worship. What are your thoughts, questions, observations? Anyone?
I just wanted to say that when I found unity, it was like a shining light, because I believed my whole life that everybody should get along, that God doesn't make mistakes and people are different for a reason, and for us all to learn how to get along and accept each other. So I was very happy when I found Unity to come and join. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us.
But how do you get people to join together that really are different and don't want to join together?
That's a great question. You can't make people do it. It has to start with ourselves. We have to get over ourselves. But you can't make others cooperate. But what the centurion had done is he ingratiated others by his kindness, by his willingness to work with them, and that it helped to tear down all those walls of division. I shoot, I can't think of his name. Gator, you can help me with this one. He died a couple of years ago. Wasn't really a pastor, but he ingratiated himself to both sides, working with KKK as well as the white community and black communities, rather. Who was that? And you know who I'm talking about?
I think I do. I'm not sure.
Okay.
To my John Lewis?
No, I
No,
was talking
John
about
Lewis.
somebody else. I think
Okay.
he lived in Tennessee, uh, and just died a couple of years ago. Anyway, he was a well-known uh, pastor type person. I don't know if he ever pastored a church or not, come to think of it. But
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
but he befriended those who were very different intentionally to break down those walls of division.
I think to Carol's question as well, there are some that will never join a cause,
Yeah.
a greater good. We cannot become stagnant waiting on them. Even a small group can make incredible change happen if along that way they treat others with respect and kindness, but they are militant in their love. When I say militant, I don't mean violent, but resistant, intentional. And so we don't need a huge crowd to bring about change. Um, we can start it and get the momentum going, even with a small group of like-minded individuals. So
Right.
it's overwhelming at times, especially during this climate, because we feel so outnumbered. But remember that it just takes a few to start a ball rolling, and other people will fill in as they see it, as they gain courage by looking at you, witnessing this leadership. It happens. Sorry, Bob.
No, nothing to be sorry about. Thank you. This is an open forum. Feel free to chime in. Your voice is as important as any.
I always think about how the black people marched with peace and they did everything with peace, the ones that had that in their hearts. And it seemed like they just have only gotten a few steps further, and it's almost impossible when you face such adversity. But I guess with God's help, we can do it in small numbers, but it's hard to see. It's just hard to see how it can be done. And then all of a sudden, I guess it happens. And so we
Yeah.
have to persevere in that, those small steps.
Yeah, it's a big part of it, perseverance.
We have to trust that God will bring individuals by their hearts into the movement.
Right.
That we're not responsible for all that.
Right.
God can water these seeds that we're planting in our small way, and you would be amazed. I mean, I think back to Gandhi in India when the British Empire was controlling it. And Gandhi and just a few individuals began performing these nonviolent acts. And within 10 years had overthrown the British, and they removed the empire from India. I mean, there's instances of that all throughout history.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to trust in that.
One thing that comes to my mind is just sit here and all of a sudden pop, there it is, was John Kennedy. I was in college when he was running for president, and we cannot have a Catholic president. The United States just cannot have
I
one.
remember
Just
that.
no way we can have a Catholic president. But when he was elected, he was a very good president. And I was in Fort Knox when he was shot, and so some people just couldn't get over the fact that he was president and he made a good president. So that's something that comes to my mind of people thinking badly of people who are good and treating them bad.
Mhm.
Right.
A good point, Roy.
Thank you.
And knowing that perseverance on our part, we may not see the results,
Exactly.
but we persevere anyway.
Certainly. Yeah. Oh, we don't always see the results during our lifetime. Even Jesus, um, the end of his life,
Yep.
he had a handful of followers, and some of those were the ones that actually turned him in. So, very, very likely we may not see all the results ourselves.
There's a great sermon by Dr. King on um, our dreams that are unfulfilled.
Hmm.
And he talks about King David wanting to see the temple built, was never able to see that. Moses going in the promise was never able to see that. But that God sees the intent in our heart and blesses that, to everybody's various points. Powerful sermon that Bob preached this morning that for me reminded me that even the smallest acts of love and kindness, I think about Chrissy reaching out to individuals we never know about, can change the hearts and minds of those who are suffering, and then witness to those who they haven't said anything, but they have good hearts.
Right.
And they move in a direction to affirm other people by seeing what Chrissy does, by seeing how people are loved and nourished. It spreads. I'm a full believer in that. I'm very optimistic about the hearts of individuals of goodwill.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gator.
And I think sometimes we forget that God works through people who are not a part of the inside group. That God can work through the centurion, the same as the people in within the temple crowd. Um, God's emissaries are not all church people.
Thank God.
Yeah, right. And unfortunately, sometimes the resistance is within.
Exactly.
This is a little bit of a delayed reaction, but I kind of wanted to comment on what Becky was saying a minute ago.
Okay.
About trying to remain peaceful and how it's difficult during such times.
Yeah.
I'm doing quite a bit of work within the community, and you can bet your bottom dollar I get a lot of people looking at me like I'm something else, and they don't ever get anything other than a smile at me, or I may even hold the door for them, because I'm not letting anyone put hate in my heart.
Hmm. Powerful, Chrissy.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other observations, comments, or questions before we close for today?
This was a great sermon to start our Lenten season, Bob. Very good.
Thank you, Chief. We will continue our walk with Jesus next Sunday. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you. We're seeing a few more people joining us on the app. So thanks, folks who are on the app this morning. And those of you who are joining us wherever you are, whether you're on the website or on Zoom or there in the sanctuary, so glad you were here. Just remember, you are wonderfully and beautifully made, an image in the very image of God. God bless you all and have a good day. Amen.